Hey guys, and welcome to your 9th HTML5 tutorial. This is Rafi Ozik, and in this tutorial we're just going to go over some basics of HTML5 and HTML. So the first thing I want to discuss with you is the difference between a class and an ID. We spoke about earlier how a class is an attribute that can be attached to an element inside of an HTML file. And basically, like when we have a class equals error in our style, we went to dot error, dot representing a class before the error, and then we made it color red, and then we looked inside, and when we loaded it, we have that red there for the error class. In ID, we put here this ID success, and we say green text of success. If we go into the style element, you'll see for IDs, instead of dot, we use number. It says number success, and the color is green. And I'm getting a live preview error. Make sure there is an index.html file in project in order to launch live preview. Well, let's do it again. So if you're using brackets, the mistake there is you have to launch your preview from your HTML file and not from your style.css sheet. So we see here we have our website. So we have the error here, and it's red, and we have the green text of success here. So that's how you do your ID, is with the number, classes with dot. So the question is, what's the difference between class and ID? In terms of CSS and HTML, there's actually no difference. You can use them interchangeably, and it would make no difference to how your website would look. What it does make a difference for is soon we're going to start using JavaScript. And when we do use JavaScript, we're going to be manipulating in general ID elements, and because of that, an ID attribute, a specific ID attribute, let's say in this case success, should only be used once on each page. So just to make it clear, an ID element should only be used once per page, whereas a class element attribute, can be used as many times as you want on the page. So an ID element should only be used once, and a class element can be used as many times as you want. Another thing that we looked at here in HTML is HTML5 is that we have the head. And we mentioned here that in HTML5 in the past we mentioned that it's not necessary. Anything that's above the body tag does not need that head tag. I actually do suggest for now to kind of use it in general in your code, just because it would confuse some people who've been programming a long time and haven't gotten totally caught up with HTML5. But probably even a few months or a year from now, you're going to see more and more people not using that head tag, since anything above the body tag is considered metadata in HTML5. Another thing that HTML5 does a little bit differently than previous versions is, you notice here I have this / inside of these empty elements that close themselves. You actually don't need that in HTML5. If I just got rid of this, it would still work. And in past videos I didn't use it. I do recommend for now that you use it because it makes your code compatible with XHTML and with XML. So if you ever want to use XML in order to parse your page or whatever, you need these / for it to understand your code. If you don't know what XML is, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. Just know that for now, these / just make your HTML compatible with more technologies. Another thing you should know about HTML5 is there's something called semantic elements in HTML5, and in the past in HTML you kind of had to do, every time you did, let's say like a header, you have to do div class equals header, and you'd have to create a header class, and every time you wanted to do a nav class, you do div class equals nav, and inside of this you might have like an unordered element with a bunch of with a list, and you would have to do div class equals footer, and onwards and onwards. And basically what they did in HTML5 is they got together and said, hey, there's these things that are used over and over and over again in pretty much every single website. Let's just make them part of HTML, because that just makes a lot of sense, and it helps with readability, maintainability, and writing code. So some of these semantic elements in HTML5 include header. So you don't have to do a div class, you could just do header. There's article. There's section. There's nav. And of course there's footer. So let's take a look at footer. If we went down here and we just made a footer and we said, this is a footer, it's not going to really do any design changes for us. So if we take a look at this, it just says this is a footer. Basically semantic elements are just block elements. They're not really styled. The main purpose of them is just neater than creating a class. But if we were to go to style.css, we could create a footer And just like H1, since it's a semantic class, we don't have to use dot, we don't have to use number. And let's say we could add margin top 50 pixels, and then we're going to say border style, and we're going to say solid, and we're going to say border width, let's say is 5 pixels, and border radius, and we're going to say is 20 pixels. We'll make it a little bit rounded. And if we took a look at it now, we get our little footer. And maybe we want to add some padding also inside of here. So say padding 20 pixels, and the padding will give us some padding inside. And that's really, that would be our footer. And it just makes things pretty simple in terms of not having to deal with things that you use over and over again. It's that are obvious to many websites. They added these things to HTML5. So in the next video, I want to build out a website with you using what we've learned in HTML and CSS. And let's get a simple website up for our 10th HTML5 video, and that will be the last video in this series.